I'm Susan. Welcome to Tea and Games. The tea today is, again, Builder's Basic British Breakfast Blend. And it's been a while since we did one of those What Have We Been Playing videos. So, let's take a look at what we've been playing. There have been, we'll start with, the games that I have mentioned in previous videos. Go through those rather quickly. And I didn't knock anything over. Yay! We're off to a good start. We have been playing Bonanza still. And I want to remind people that are interested that the two-player variant for this is different from the box Bonanza, the dual. The dual in this box is different. I got some questions on Discord that I simply could not answer as to whether or not this would be a good idea to buy this for the variation cards. Since this is the only Bonanza we have, I don't know. If you're not familiar with this, this is Uwe Rosenberg's first game. It's a little card game about growing beans. It's got very cute comic bean art. I did make some notes on the variants that are available so that you can make your own decision. The reason why I decided to go with this is it just seemed like it had all the options in one box. And since I didn't already have any Bonanza, this meant that I could play pretty much anything with anyone. The base game plays 3 to 5 players. The first variant, you add 3 additional types of bean cards that are in the box, and it plays 3 to 7. The second variant is a 4 to 5 player variant, and you add in field beans. The third variant is the dual, the 2-player version, in which you add wax and coffee beans in. There is a gold Amigo bean coin, which is used in a 3 to 5 player variant. And there is a magpie bean, which is exclusive to this box, which I showed you in a previous video. I looked, and it can be added in and used in the base game or any of the variants. So that gives you a little bit better idea of the different combinations and different types of beans that you might get. You're going to add 3 additional beans for the variant, which bumps the player count from maximum of 5 to maximum of 7. You're going to add a couple of more beans and also take out a couple of beans, I think, for the dual version. The magpie beans can be used in base game and all the variants. And there's a variant for the bean coin. So that's Bonanza. And we are still playing Micro Macro Crime City. We did another case this past weekend. It was a level 3 case, which I think it's the first level 3 case we've done, and that is not the hardest level. So we are inching our way up in difficulty. I had mentioned that the map was really huge in other ones, but I did not have the box to hand. So when I said you're going to need a really big table for this map. Okay, this is the map width. See, it goes like almost side to side for the table. And yeah, the map, cityscape, length, size. See? It is ginormous. And this is not a game if you have a small playing space. And I don't know how I'm going to get this folded back up again on camera, but I will manage it somehow. Just one more wacky moment in these videos, me waving this thing around. But it's got fascinating little details. It comes with a magnifying glass, but I would very much recommend that if you are not playing this solo, that you have a magnifying glass and a fairly strong one for everybody that's playing. And some people have mentioned that playing this around the table is kind of tricky if you have a lot of people, and that's true. I mean, Robert and I were bumping into each other at times, and I found if he was looking one direction, I was looking another direction, that if I were looking at the cityscape, see, cityscape, if I was looking at the cityscape upside down, I sometimes had difficulty picking out elements that I was looking for. Which is probably just a pattern recognition problem. But we are having a lot of fun with the game. It is working really, really well. It comes with a magnifying glass, plexiglass sheet thing, and we also had a magnifying glass here at the house, so we did have 2 magnifying glasses. But I would highly recommend that. They recommend very strongly that you play this under strong light, that you have really good lighting. So I think that if you have a close focus source of light, it might help in finding stuff, but then again, it might just give you more glare. I am not sure. But they do recommend strong light, and I recommend magnifying glasses for everyone who is participating. That's 2. And now the third game, which I have mentioned before, both of those have been mentioned in previous videos, is Labyrinth, the old classic from 1986, which we only just recently got and played for the first time. As I said before, it's kind of a kiddie game in a way, but it's one of those games that adults can enjoy too because it's very puzzly. I did not take it out of the box when I mentioned it before. And this is a game, we played it again because you could just take it out, just drop the tiles and like turn them over and put them on the board and you're ready to go. Deal out the cards. There are 24 cards that are dealt out evenly. It plays 2 to 4. This is the board with the fixed tiles. They are raised on here. They're not printed on, they're raised. You might be able to see edgewise that they're sticking up there. And you place the tiles along these areas here. Here are the little arrows. These are the rows and columns that you can push when you slide a tile in, thereby changing the pathways. And you can see there are treasures on these tiles. These are the items that you'll be trying to get to in the maze, and there are more on the tiles that you place in between here. It's a fun game. It plays relatively fast. It plays okay at 2. You can't plan your moves ahead of time because every player that takes a move breaks a pathway on the board and maybe makes a new connection. It's a huge amount of fun. So, I mean, if you're looking for a game that is fun and can be a lot of fun for both adults and kids, it's very good. It is a classic. I mean, it came out in 1986 and it's still around. So that tells you something right there. But it's one of those kind of games where if you have like 4 people around the table, if you want one of those games where people are going to be going, no, like every time somebody makes a move or something, or yes, because they have just inadvertently given you the connection that you need. This would fall into that category. This is going to be one of those kind of, ooh, but at the same time, it's very puzzly and you're moving things around. Adults, particularly that like puzzles and spatial puzzle things, would probably enjoy this. You can learn how to play it in about a minute. Rodney Smith over at Watch It Played has a how to play video on this, and this is how I found out about the game because I didn't know about it. And I got this copy over the holidays, and we've played it quite a few times. It's just a lot of fun, like really simple. I want to say light, but at the same time, you're going like, I moved that there, and then he moves, and then, oh, and now he broke that. So now I just go here. But if I slide that there, that's going to break that connection over there, and I don't know what I'm going to do then. And I have to move after I slide the tile, so do I move to that tile or do I move to this tile because he's probably going to push there? And it's one of those kind of things. I mean, it's not like super brain burnery, but you do have to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. You can't just make random moves and hope it'll work out okay. That really would be bad. So those are games that I've mentioned before on videos that we are still playing here right now. And now we'll get to some of the newer stuff. We picked up New York Zoo in Barnes & Noble's big after Christmas sale. That's mentioned in the haul video. Actually, I think all of the next 3 games are mentioned in my haul video, which was a couple of videos back. This is another game by Uwe Rosenberg. And if you're looking for a zoo game that everyone can play, because let's face it, Ark Nova is not really a family weight game, this is that zoo game. It is a polyomino tile placement game. These are the player mats here. Down here in this corner, it tells you which player count you're going for. And they're double-sided. And you can see there's different areas here. Also, this is your little stable enclosure where you keep spare animals, and the number of animals you can keep there changes depending upon the player count too. So if you're looking for the board, just keep looking and flipping over and you'll get the right player count. These animals up here, you see these kind of, oh, can you see them? Yeah, right there. That's a flamingo and a meerkat. These are the 2 animals that are your starting animals. Whatever player board you get determines your starting animals. Like this one has a kangaroo. And up at the top is your player aid. Now, we have only played this at 2 players, and for the 2-player game, yeah, here's a 2-player board right here on top. For the 2-player game, you don't put out, you don't put out as many polyomino tiles to be picked up when you're going around the board, and you also get a half dozen polyomino tiles that are the largest tiles, the most number of squares, that are the ones that are not laid down. You shuffle them up at random and you deal 3 of the, I think 3 of the 7 and 3 of the 6 square tiles. And you place those on the board to begin with, so that though this is a large section of board, you have some of it covered by tiles already. I guess in a way that's kind of like this grassy area here too, that they have on for other player counts. But the difference is that with a 2-player game, you don't lay out all of the polyomino tiles to be picked up. And we will get to that tile laying out here in a minute. This is your board. Yeah, that's it. New York Zoo. Okay, let's see what we got here. I've got it right side up for the camera. Yes, I do. It's actually fairly long. These spaces here, these little bays here, this is where you will be laying stacks of polyomino tiles. And you will draw the top tile if you land on that spot. And there's you have a choice of how many spaces to move. I forget right off the top of my head what the maximum number of jumps is, but needless to say, you can't go around the board very big, making huge numbers. But when you count this as a space when you're moving, and you count this as a space when you're moving, and this is a space, and that's a space, and this is not counted as a space when you're moving, because this is the breeding marker. So when this is laid out on the table, there are stacks of polyomino tiles here. And if you land on here, you pick up the top polyomino tile. If you land on here, this is how you get more animals, or one of the ways you can get more animals, and you get whatever animal is shown here. You need to have 2 animals to make more. When you pass a breeding area, like say if you moved from here to here, picking up a polyomino tile here and placing it, picking up a polyomino tile here and placing it, then because you passed this breeding animal, which is penguin breeding, then if you have 2 penguins, not in your like little, doesn't count if it's in the little stable thing, but if you have 2 penguins on your polyomino tiles, then you get to make 1 more penguin. And I might add that it's 2 or more penguins. If you got a half a dozen penguins on a 7 square tile, then you still only get 1 more penguin, but that would complete that tile. And that is important. Okay, let me show you what we're talking about here with the meeples and the tiles. First of all, here is your elephant. This is what you use to move around. Your little marker that you and your opponents need to move around. We have our meeples, kangaroo meeple. I think the flamingo meeples are particularly well done. We have penguins. They're very nice. And Arctic foxes. The kangaroos are actually specified as being tree kangaroos, and I do not know the difference between tree kangaroos and regular. The meerkats, people really lose their mind over the meerkat meeples in this game, but I have to say that I think that the meerkat meeples in Savannah Park are better. So if you're looking for like the ultimate meerkat meeple, take a look at Savannah Park. The difference is you got a lot of meerkat meeples and they breed like mad in this game. Whereas in Savannah Park, the meerkat meeples is just one per player because they're used to mark a spot when you're trying out a tile. Okay, that's a nice little digression here. Now let's look at the polyomino tiles. The polyomino tiles come in different colors. And on this board here, can you see there are little, like where the bay is, there are little tiny squares with colors there. And that tells you what color tiles that you put in this particular bay. And you stack the tiles with the smallest, least number of square tiles on the bottom up to the top. And you go around placing them like that. So that you will have the darkest green tiles, which have 7 squares on them on the top. And the lightest green tiles, which have 4 squares on the bottom of those stacks. So you kind of got to peel off that upper layer, though in the 2-player game, that upper layer is kind of pre-peeled off, you know, so that you already have some of the larger pieces on your board. Now, we got good news and bad news about those larger pieces. The good news is larger pieces fill up more of your board. So the whole point, this is a race. It's whoever fills it up first. So the good news is bigger pieces fill up more of your board. The bad news is you place your animals on these pieces. And when a piece is filled up, then you get bonus squares. You take your flamingos or whatever off, you put one into the staging area up there, and then you get a bonus tile. The bonus tiles help you fill in. So these bonus tiles are really important because they help you fill in gaps. So every time you complete one of these things, you get more tiles. But of course, this puts more, it covers up more squares, but it takes you longer to fill it up with going around picking up animals. And you can't mix animals. It all has to be the same thing in each enclosure. These are the bonus tiles. These are the 2 big ones. You want to be one of the first or second people to complete, like to get all, completely fill a polyomino tile with animals. Because these cover like a nice chunk of real estate, these attractions. I think they're both roller coasters. But let's not forget, you have your choice of attractions, and there are 4s and more 4s and some 2s, not a huge number of 2s, but some 2s, and lots of 1s to fill in those little holes that you end up with in polyomino games. So in deciding about, you've got to make choices when you're going around about whether or not you want to pick up more animals or whether or not you want to pick up polyominoes and try to fill up your grid. And you're also evaluating the polyomino places that are, the things that are available to you. And if you got a shot at something that maybe has a few less tiles, and let's look at these tiles. You may have noticed that there's similarities between the greens when I was showing you the little squares on the board where you lay them out. That's a little bit of a problem. There's a big difference between dark green and light green, but there is a bit less difference between the medium dark green and the medium light green. There's like two in-between tiles that are very similar in color. This is less of a problem. I mean, when you're first laying them out, you might kind of go, huh, because you're going by color. But this is less of a problem in gameplay. But also here, when you're putting them in there, the way they help you differentiate is you can compare because they show you size. The darker ones are larger, the darker ones have more squares. So, I mean, that helps a bit. But when you're evaluating tiles to put out, don't go by the color, go by the number of squares. If you've played a lot of polyomino games, you can probably tell at a glance how many squares a weird shape has. But if you haven't, this, unlike a lot of polyomino games, it has a grid. You can see on there are little faint marker tracings on there. Shows up even more in the other one. It's not so much as to kind of break the illusion of a solid green area. But, I mean, if you're ever in any doubt how many pieces, whether this is this one or this one or this one or that one, you can pick out the number of squares pretty easily because they're actually marked on a grid. And that is very helpful. But I do feel like that these two middle shades between the darkest and the lightest are a little bit too close together. But I'm not sure how they could have done it any better, considering that you're trying to get 4 shades of a fairly naturalistic color of green. And I have not gone over everything about how to play New York Zoo, but we have enjoyed the heck out of playing it. It's fun. It's puzzly in the way that polyomino games always are puzzly. But it's got like nifty decision-making processes as to whether or not you go for animals or whether or not you go for tiles, and you've got to get these tile, that tile. You need to have at least one of those 4 tiles. As soon as you can get a 4 square tile, you get it and you start loading it with animals, because you can cycle those animals through pretty quickly with the 4, because the highest number of tiles is 7. 7 squares. That's the big difference between 7 and 4 when you're trying to load it up with animals and you have X amount of animal breeding, and you're looking and you're going like, okay, I need to pick up a meerkat before we come around the meerkat breeding again, and then I've got the Arctic foxes. For some reason, we have trouble with Arctic fox breeding. I don't know if it's just the games that we've played, but I have only been able to breed Arctic foxes once. It just does not work out well for me, and does not seem to be anything with the gameplay, because my husband can get Arctic foxes, which... Oh, and I want to mention one other difference in the 2-player game, besides the fact that you pre-fill a certain section of your player mat. And you can choose the section, you just pre-fill it with random tiles that you get. Besides that, in the 2-player game, you have something called bonus breeding, meaning every time you pass a breeding thing and you have enough animals that you can breed of that type, and you breed that animal, you can then breed one other animal in a different enclosure that... And I mean, if you have meerkats in 2 enclosures and you pass meerkat breeding, then you can get a meerkat for each of those enclosures. But I mean, if you're, say, you've just bred Arctic foxes in a 2-player game and you got a couple of penguins in an enclosure over there, you can get another penguin for bonus breeding. It's another way that they help speed the game up for 2 players, besides having part of the map refilled and having a less deep stack of tiles to go around and around and around and pick up all of those tiles. It shortens the game for 2 players. So this game actually plays pretty darn briskly at 2. But it is still a lot of fun. Very interesting and fun, and it's cute. It is a family weight game, I would say. Not as light as Labyrinth in terms of being able to teach kids to play it, but yeah, totally family weight. The other one that we got during Barnes & Noble's half-price sale was Dice Throne, because we are like some of the few people among the board game community who have not played any version of Dice Throne. And I mean, I hear about Dice Throne this and Dice Throne that, and skirmish games in general are very popular right now, and we don't have any skirmish games. And people kept saying, well, you know, it's basically Yahtzee. It's basically Yahtzee. It's just like Yahtzee. But I had never played Yahtzee. I know that there's something called Yahtzee, and that at some point people say Yahtzee, but I didn't know anything about it. So I looked online and I taught myself how to play Yahtzee, and it turns out Yahtzee is one of these games that's like really simple to learn, but kind of tricky to do well at. And it is just a dice chucking game, and it is very, very dependent upon luck. Well, here's what Dice Throne is. Dice Throne is weaponized Yahtzee. If you know how to play Yahtzee, this basically adds weapons and makes it to where when you do those dice rolls and you get certain things, instead of just marking them off, you do damage with them. Or you can defend from damage too. Everybody recommended, including the Dice Throne people themselves, getting Barbarian versus Moon Elf. If you had not played Dice Throne, that this was the starter pair. You can get huge boxes that have everyone. This is season 1 re-rolled. And they come in their own nifty little cases here. So if you get other Dice Throne characters, you can mix and match them and play different heroes against each other. There's not a lot to the game, not in terms of gameplay or it's light. This is like the lightest thing we've played in ages. Here's your board. You basically chuck the dice and you try to make some of these combinations here. You have cards that can possibly modify the dice or do things to your opponent or help you in some other ways so that you can sell for combat points. You have tokens to mark on opponents' boards things that you can do, or tokens to mark defensive skills that you may have in waiting to be deployed. The only problem that we have with this, because it's just a fun little dice chucker, if you want a really lightweight dice chucker, in some weird ways, this is almost lighter than Yahtzee is. If you want just some lightweight dice chucker, this is it. It's very, very easy. The only problem we had is that so far, no matter, and we have switched off opponents, so far, no matter who is playing what, Barbarian always wins. It could be that we just haven't played it enough to get really, really good in terms of our decision making and timing of using skills or various cards against other opponents. But I went through and I looked because I was thinking, this does not seem right to me. Moon Elf does have more expensive cards. It costs more to play cards for Moon Elf to do the upgrades and to do stuff against your opponents using cards. Barbarian has more cheap cards and less expensive cards in general. And Barbarian does a tremendous amount of damage. And also has the ability to heal by rolling dice, which Moon Elf doesn't have. We have just found Barbarian to be very difficult, well nigh impossible to defeat, but we have not played it that much. And it's possible that as we get a little bit more familiar with the skills and the cards and the possible combinations and stuff, that we'll get a little bit better at it and maybe we'll be able to defeat the Barbarian. If you know somebody that would be a good matchup for a Barbarian to be able to knock the Barbarian down, that would be a closer match for the Barbarian than Moon Elf, let me know in comments. I would be interested to know that. I don't know that we really want to get into buying like a crap ton more of these things, because this game is just, it's saying something when you say a game is almost too light for us, but it is very fast. And it is very light, so it's kind of one of these games that you can play when you have basically no time or energy. The big win, I think, well, I really like New York Zoo. I started saying the big win, and here's a great thing about New York Zoo. I can win it. I finally found an Uwe Rosenberg polyomino game that isn't difficult for me to win. For some reason, my win ratio with most polyomino games is not terribly good. And part of this is because my husband is really, really good at polyomino games. But I have just cleaned his clock a couple of times with New York Zoo, which, I mean, makes me kind of happy because it's nice to know that there is at least one kind of polyomino game that I can win without like a titanic struggle and making a ginormous mess of my board. I just find this one a lot easier than most polyomino games. I'm doing much better. I'm doing much better at winning for New York Zoo. My ratio is much better than with other polyomino games. But I still have to say maybe the best game we got is First Rat. Yeah. The idea is there are rats in a junkyard, and they are trying to go to the moon. They've heard the moon is made of cheese, and they want some of that cheese. Although, interestingly enough, there is cheese in this game because you get cheese as provisions and also for barter for other rats. This is kind of a standard size game board. Here is your junkyard. And these are the spaces that you can move on here, the little oval things. Each one of them has things on them that you can pick up, resources, which when you get to the launch area up here, then you can build certain things, rocket parts, and you can put your scoring cubes on them, and then you can put your scoring cubes on each rocket, and that's where your ratronauts go when they make it to the end of the path. Although doubling back in this game is something that you need to strategically do in order to gather resources and get stuff. You can get things from, can get energy drinks, which are a one-time doubling of resources you pick up on one turn from the frog here. Harry the hamster will give you backpacks, which give you bonuses for certain types of things. The raven's nest up here will give you, where is it? Raven? Yeah, raven's nest up here will give you bottle caps, which are points for certain conditions. At the bottom, you've got the rat burrow where you can raise new rats and pick up comics, which were the inspiration. The rats found comic books, and that inspired them to go to the moon. So you can buy comics, which will also give you certain bonuses, advantages, upgrades, that kind of thing. And down here on your rat burrow, you can, that's the comics, that's the new rats. And down here, you can go all the way around and get a scoring marker there. And the reason why I'm waving this big game board around is because this thing has almost infinite replayability. Check out the flip side of the board here. Yeah, no little colorful ovals, but no little colorful ovals because they are in a baggie in the box. You can lay out these ovals and see the colors make a difference because when you're moving multiple rats, they have to land on the same color. So you can lay out the different ovals with the different resources you can get in a random pattern here. And you also have little score things so that you can fill in the score things here, like the point values for the scoring tracks. You can lay those in. Those are cardboard pieces you can lay in on this board, so you can change the value of what you score for doing various things, like adding cheese to the provisions or passing the construction lights. There's a light string on here that if you land on the blue light bulbs, yeah, like here, then you can move the light bulb marker up. And because that corridor is now better well lighted, rats that come up behind that light bulb can gather more resources than the rats that are ahead of your light bulb string. So you kind of got to balance things out. Like, do you want to move up on the light bulb track, get more for this, or do you want to go for moving your rats to get more rats out of the burrow, or pick up some of those comics which are going to give you good stuff? If you stop at Harry the Hamster's, if you pay cheese, you can keep going forward. But if you steal, then you go back to the burrow. But strategically, there could be an advantage to going back to the burrow because then you pick up more resources because you're now behind the light string. And that's the same with the raven and the frog thing, is you can pay for it or with cheese, or you can steal. And if you steal, you go back to the burrow and make your way back up. But there are shortcuts on this. But you have to pay resources to use the shortcuts unless you have like special comics or things that give you a free pass in those things. So there are a lot of interesting decision-making points. But at the same time, it's not going to be one of those things that's going to be so crunchy you're going to have analysis paralysis. And there's different strategic ways that you can go about doing this. And I will tell you, and this is something that you should keep in mind for your first playthrough. Oh yeah, and for the beginner game, which we played this twice, but we still are playing without the super rats. There are super rats that you can play with in the next, in a more advanced iteration of the game, which we just haven't added in yet. But I will tell you, for your first playthrough of the game, being the first rat does not guarantee that you will win. I mean, yes, you get a lot of points if you are the first rat up there, and particularly if you can build all the rocket components and build one rocket and get your little rat in the first slot, and so that you've got cubes in the first slots of everything up there. But that does not guarantee a win because there are so many different ways to add points onto the board. There is the light bulb track. When you pass construction lights, you get it. There is donating cheese for provisions for the trip. You get points like, and again, it's like whoever's there first gets the most in descending order. You only have 8 cubes, so you have to make a strategic decision about what scoring areas you want to go for. And honestly, I don't think I would recommend completely neglecting any of them. I kind of try to go for a balance, and that seems to have worked out okay for a novice player, not playing with super rats or whatever. But I mean, there's a scoring track down in the burrow. There's a cheese scoring track. There's the rocket scoring track. There's the light scoring track. So, I mean, there are a lot of different scoring tracks on this thing. So, and you've only got 8 cubes. So, I mean, you can get your second rat up there to the rocket, and that might put you over. But just being first rat is not enough. You've got to really try to stack up the opponents, the scoring cube, the points, either by getting a second rat up there to the launch pad and filling in some of those things, making rocket parts and rockets, or you've got to be pretty good at being able to fill in other things. And game end is triggered when one of the players has used up 8 cubes, 8 scoring cubes. There are 2 additional cubes because you will go one more round after the game end is triggered by those 8 cubes. But so it is kind of a race, but you do have to kind of make decisions and balance out what scoring areas that you're going to go for and what you're going to try to be first or second at and how many cubes you've got. And pay attention to how many cubes your opponent has too. Because I thought, I'm going to win on the next turn. Like, not the next turn. I had one more turn and then I would be at the launch pad. And then my husband triggered game end. And I only had one more turn, which still left me slightly short of the launch pad. So then I had to try to maximize my resources and try to get as many points as I could scrape or in that very last round. It plays well at 2. I think it would play really well with more players. It plays up to 5. So that's actually a pretty nice player count. And that is what we have been playing. It's been a while since we did one of these What Have We Played videos, so there's actually quite a lot of stuff we've played. Because all of these games, well, the games that we've played before that I've mentioned in other videos, I think we've mainly only played those once since I made a video, maybe twice for Micro Macro. But all of these we've played more than once. We've played at least 2 times for all of these. I think maybe more for Dice Strong, but anyhow, this is what we've been doing, and we've been having a lot of fun with these games. I would say that of all of these games, they are all fun, and they are all fun in a slightly different kind of way. But if you're just kind of looking around for something to play, this is a nice mixture, actually, in terms of mechanics and gameplay experience. So There's a lot to choose from here, and we've had a lot of fun doing it. I have enjoyed talking to you about games, as usual. It's good to be here. It's good to almost kind of sort of see you. I will see you if you comment. Yes, comment. I will reply, or at the very least, click a little heart button, because I do like me some comments. So like, subscribe. If you've already subscribed, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, because I'm just like a small channel. My husband and I we're weekend board gamers, and we have not a ginormous board game collection, just a modest board game collection. And we just play for fun. We're very casual board gamers. So if you're just kind of looking for a casual board gamer to hang out with, I guess that would be me. Anyway, I will see you next time round the table. Bye.